Privileged to be here today with you. If you don't know who I am, my name is Bruno, and my wife and I, we pastor the extension in Dallas, Texas. And Pastor Josh asked me to come over the weekend and be able to just hang out with you guys and minister, and it's been a true joy. Many of you maybe don't know that our extension was adopted by you guys. And so you call Pastor Josh, I call him Papa Josh, since he adopted us. And I know what some of you are thinking too. You're like, great, another white, bald pastor. I mean, how many more do we need? And let me help you with a few things. Number one, I'm the good-looking one, right? So if you see one that's kind of so-so, that's Pastor Daniel from Alaska, right? So just to help distinguish us, and I love Pastor Daniel, and I can tease him that way. Hey, if you have your Bibles, go with me to the book of Hebrews, chapter 10. You know, I'm really bad with times. Like, I don't know, like, when things happen, like how many years ago, but it's several years ago. I was working at Target Financial Services, and my wife was studying to get her master's degree up in Minnesota at the time. That's where her family's from. And one of the things I noticed with Target at the time is that they offered a lot of classes for just improving your skills and stuff like that. And there was one that was called problem solving, and the caption was how to find resolutions for anything that you might be facing. And I'm thinking, this is amazing that I'm going to be able to take a class and they're going to tell me how to find answers to any problem solving issues. I'm thinking I'm going to be able to apply this to the church, to the kingdom, to my family. I'm going to resolve all my wife's issues and children's issues. I'm teasing. I'm saying that, but she's not here. But I'm just thinking, like, this is it. So I go and I take the class, and I'm sitting there, and they're giving us this little thing, matrix thing, and all this, and like, okay, now suppose, and they give us different examples, and I'm thinking, this is really effective, and this is amazing, and I can't wait to get back to my team, on the following day and apply it, and we're going to be the most effective team ever in the history of Target. And so I get there, and I find that this little matrix thing, it worked really well in a classroom setting, but when I got to real life, it was no good whatsoever. And I quickly realized that in just a couple hours of trying it out in the real world, it just kind of fell apart. Sometimes when it comes to things of faith, we give things that are really good in a classroom setting, but then you walk outside the four walls and you find out, man, this thing doesn't really work. And I have little patience for things like that. I don't want to hear fluff. Don't give me ABC formulas, 1, 2, 3s that work really well in theory, but then when I'm faced with real life situations, circumstances, it doesn't hold up. I really want to know what works on the front line of battle, because then that'll work in my life as well. And when it comes to things of faith, that's even more true as well. And you find even throughout our church history, even at the time when a lot of these books and letters are being written, that the church is being persecuted. And look, for example, like in Hebrews chapter 10, we're just going to hang out in Hebrews today. If you want to find the main theme to Hebrews, it's that Jesus is more better than anything. That's the basic theme. And so here in Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 32, we'll just look at a few things. I want to share, I'll just call it a secret, but it's not really a secret, but to great faith. How can you endure and persevere and have joy and have fun in the process? So Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 32, it says, the author's calling them to recall things. This is a point where he starts applying everything he's been teaching, or the author's been teaching up to chapter 10. Now he's beginning to apply it to the readers and to us. So in verse 32 it says, recall the former days when after you were enlightened, you endured a hard struggle with sufferings, sometimes being publicly exposed to reproach, meaning people were making fun of you, and affliction, and sometimes being partners with those so treated. For you had compassion on those in prison, and you joyfully accepted the plundering of your property, since you knew that you yourselves had a better possession and an abiding one. Therefore, do not throw away your confidence, which has great reward, for you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised. In other words, endure, stick it out, so that you get the promise. And I want you to just see a couple things here. One of the things that the Romans were doing at this time is that they found somebody that was a Christian, they would throw them in prison. And in those days, the jail system did not provide anything for the people that were being held there. You depended on other people for water, for food, for blankets, whatever you needed. Many times people just died before they even had their day in court. So what they did, though, as a trap, they'd have Christians that were in there, and then if they saw anybody that would come and visit that Christian to give him something, they go, they're probably a believer too, and they would stick them in jail. And so he's saying, remember the time when you would do that, when you would go and actually visit your brothers and sisters that were in prison, knowing that you yourself were probably going to end up there with them, but you did it anyways. Remember that. And then he says something that's really strange. Okay, this is really kind of bizarre when we think about it. And look at the second part of verse 34, and it says, you joyfully accepted the plundering of your property. I mean, I just read that and I'm thinking like, that's kind of weird. You know, I mean, we lose an iPhone and, you know, our world comes crumbling down, and here they joyfully accept the plundering of all that they had. They were joyful. So they're confiscating their houses and their property and their checking accounts and savings account. They're taking everything away, publicly being ridiculed and pointing the finger at them, laughing, all that kind of stuff. And yet they have joy. It just seems weird, doesn't it? It's the normal, but it's weird to us today. And he gives us a little clue, and I just want you to see this. How can you endure the plundering of your stuff where somebody comes and not rightfully, I mean, just come and just, it's not right, it's not fair, but they come and they take everything you have just because you believe in Jesus. What is the secret of being joyful in the midst of that? So I want you to think in that way, because that's what the author's trying to get us to see. And here he begins to telling us at the end of verse 34, so you joyfully accepted the plundering of your property, since you knew that you yourselves had a better possession and an abiding one. And he's giving us a little clue here. How can you endure hardship and still have joy in the midst of it? And he's telling them, well, you guys were able to do it. You weren't looking at the house you just lost. You're realizing, I got a mansion. I mean, no one's going to be able to take that one away from me. You might take all my riches that I have down here on earth, but I've invested in things in the kingdom you'll never be able to touch. I've got riches you don't even understand that I have in Jesus Christ. You can't even touch that. So if you want to take this stuff, take it. It wasn't mine anyways to begin with. Then we go into chapter 11. And here, this is the chapter of the Hall of Fame of faith, which, by the way, you and I are to be part of that and participate in that. I love, before we go there, look at, just Hebrews is so good, it's hard for me to just kind of be contained, but in verse 39, look, we are not of those who shrink back and are destroyed, but of those who have faith and preserve their souls. That's just awesome. Okay, 11, verse 6, I'll just simply, the definition that the author gives of faith here. Without faith, it is impossible to please him. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists. That's pretty logical, right? Got to believe he's there. And that he rewards those who seek him. I just want to the operating definition of faith that the author is giving us is seeking God. It's not bad to ask for stuff, ask and you will receive, give us this day our daily bread, all that kind of stuff that has its place. Here the author is using our faith as you're seeking God, and really the reward is him, is really the reward. Matthew chapter 6, Jesus is talking about when you fast, when you give, when you pray, to do it in secret. The God that sees in secret will reward you in public. And this is here, he's talking about a commendation. God will commend you even in a public way for what you even do when nobody else is watching, nobody else is looking. And it's a faith that seeks after him. And you got to just start with the basic premise. Well, God, I believe you're real. I mean, if not, what am I seeking? What am I doing? The second thing that I come to understand is as I seek you, I come to find you. There's even that song, as I seek you, I come to know you, I come to love you. I mean, it's just all this progression. It's all about that relationship with him. And it's important to keep in mind, okay? This is frontline battle kind of thing. It's important to understand that a primary thing of our faith is really to seek him. It's to come to know him, okay? So now we go and we look at different people that the author is presenting to us. Look, for example, in verse 8. We have, by faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith, he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him of the same promise. Okay, now, just pause there for a second. How could Abraham, what is the secret to his faith? How could he just get up and obey God, and he's going, he has no clue where he's going. They don't know where to forward the mail at. You can honestly tell his mother-in-law, I don't know where I'm going to go, anyways, but he's just, he doesn't know. He's telling his family, we're just going to go, and when we get there, God will tell us, I suppose, but we're just going to go in this direction. How can you do that? How could you get up and leave everything and just pick up, your roots and everything and go? Well, in verse 10, he gives us the secret of this. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. All right, so Abraham isn't looking at what he's leaving behind. He's looking at what lies ahead. He's looking forward to a city. Now, this is important because it becomes a theme in the rest of this book. He's looking forward to a city whose designer and builder is God. Now, and you look, if they would have looked back, look at verse 15. If they had been thinking of that land from which they had gone out, they would have had opportunity to return. If they'd have been thinking of what they left behind, they would find an excuse to actually go back and return. But as it is, in verse 16, they desire a better country, that is a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared for them a city. Again, city. Notice that. So they're not looking, and if Abraham would have been thinking, well, look at all that I'm leaving behind, he would have found an excuse to go back. You might know somebody like that. It's interesting to me, sometimes we talk about the price that we have to follow Jesus, and there is a price, there is a cost. But at the same time, there's not. I find it really hard that we'll be standing before Jesus and say, look at all that I did for you. Because, even that 24 elders in the book of Revelation fall at his feet and they throw their crowns constantly at his feet. What we have received so far outweighs anything we could ever do for him that I don't think you could ever call it a sacrifice. Think about it with me. Let's just say I come to you and I say, give me 120 years of your life. I'm going to give you eternity. Where's the sacrifice in that? Let's just say, hey, give me all the stuff that you have. Just give it to me. I got something for you nobody can touch, and the value is just, you can't even measure. Where's the sacrifice in that? We have a hard time getting out of bed to come to church. It's just too painful. It's too, costs too much. You're just not looking at the right thing. There is no cost. You might have been martyred for Jesus, but you're not going to stand before him and look at what I did. And look at the price that I paid. And got his hands in his, the holes in his hands and on his side. And I understand there's times where you gotta grit it out and you gotta just stick it through. And I understand that. I'm a big believer in perseverance and endurance, and I understand that. But at the same time, I understand at the end of it all, we receive so much in exchange for anything we could ever do. We'll never be able to say, look at all that I did and look how I sacrificed for you, Jesus. Come on. We're just not looking at things right. Anyways, he goes on and look at verse 26, and this always gets me. I just love it. Man, what a book. Okay, in verse, well, let's go to verse 24. Okay, now he talks about Moses. He goes, by faith Moses, when he was grown up, he refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Now he chose this. Look at this, choosing rather to be mistreated with the people of God than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin, and they are fleeting. And he considered the reproach of Christ. We're talking about Moses, and he considers the reproach of Christ greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt. People give their lives to accumulate wealth on this earth. And he's like, that's not true wealth. It's greater wealth is actually to bear the reproach of Christ. Man, isn't that an upside down way of thinking? For he was looking to the reward. Okay, so he wasn't looking at what he was leaving behind. He was looking at what lied ahead. Right? And he's like, it's greater wealth to actually take the reproach of Christ that has more value, more wealth than anything I could accumulate on this earth. And you gotta understand, in Egypt at the day, that was the dominating, country. It had the latest as far as technology, knowledge, schooling, education, money. He had everything at his fingertips. He willingly, he gives that up because in exchange of that, he goes, I'd rather be mistreated with my people. I'd rather take the reproach of Christ on me. And you go, how does somebody do that? Well, he was looking forward to the reward. He was looking at that. By faith, he left Egypt, not being, in verse 27, not being afraid of the anger of the king. He did not fear. Isn't that amazing? I love it. For he endured, how did he endure? As seeing him who is invisible. Man, I love that. He was not looking at the Pharaoh coming after him in the army and the fact that the Red Sea was in front of him and they were boxed in. He wasn't afraid. The Israelites were freaking out, but he wasn't. And how did he endure in that? What was the secret of his faith? Well, he just wasn't looking at that. He kept his eyes on him. That is as though the invisible. He kept, how does it say? He endured as seeing him who is invisible. He just kept his eyes on Jesus, kept his eyes on God, and he was able to endure. And then later, this author begins to name all these different people. He's like, man, we don't have time to go into all the different people. And he talks, just mentions a few names here and there. He mentions the fact that they didn't even receive the promise. They greeted it at a distance. And you go, what is he talking about even when he's doing that? Look in verse 39. All of these, though commended through their faith, did not receive what was promised, since God had provided something better for us. That's you and me. That apart from us, they should not be made perfect. What is he talking about? I want you to think of this in terms of a relay race. They ran their race, and they handed us the baton. Because you look at chapter 11, and the intent of the author is that you and I would have our name on that chapter. And you go, yeah, but you don't know me, you don't know my background, all this kind of stuff. Well, did you read some of the people that are in there? Give me a break. And now the baton is in our hand, and now it's our turn to run. And this is the assumption that the author's making. Just as these men and women in the Old Testament and moved and operated in faith and did amazing exploits and all that, you too can do the same. You're called actually to do the same. Because look at chapter 12 and verse 1. Therefore, so in light of all the people and everything that I've just been saying, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Well, how do we run? Looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter, the author, finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, and despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. It says, consider him who endured from sinners such hostility against himself, so that you may not grow weary or faint-hearted. And now the author begins to apply everything that he's been saying about these great men and women of faith, because we tend to read it and go, man, sure would be awesome if I could even just have a little portion of what they did. The intent is that we run in the same thing. We're in the same race. We've got the baton. It's our generation. It's us now in this that are running it. And we have these cloud of witnesses, meaning like if they could do it, you can do it. Okay? And look what he says in verse 1. Lay aside every weight. So this is stuff that's not sin, but it's not helping you run. So we can talk about sin and we understand I shouldn't be doing those things. But what about the things that aren't helping you in your race? If it doesn't help you advance in what God is calling you to do, and even in your relationship with Jesus Christ, I'm just going to encourage you to get rid of it. I mean, do you really need to spend 6 to 8 hours a day on Facebook and check the latest status and who liked your status and why didn't this person like my status and why did they unfriend me and don't people understand, the pain that I'm going through and all this kind of different things? I mean, do you really need that? Is that being really helpful in your faith? Do you really need to be surfing on the internet or mindlessly sitting in front of the TV? And it's not that it's sin to watch TV or to be on the internet or be on Facebook. But let me tell you, if it's not helping you run your race, get rid of it. It may not be sin, but it's not helping. Get rid of it. You do not need that. We're called to run. So who runs with backpacks and with extra gear? I mean, you want to be as light as you possibly can. You get the right tennis shoes, you get the right gear, just so you can be as light as you possibly can and so you can run as fast as you can and as hard as you possibly can. Nobody does that, holding on to stuff and let stuff go. Let stuff go. In fact, we've got to learn to let things go a little bit more. Let offenses go. Let bitterness go. Just got to get in God's presence and just let that stuff go, right? I mean, haters are going to hate. But you just get in God's presence and just shake it off. Just shake it off. You want to be free. You get rid of sin. It's not helping you. It's not helping you. And now he tells us how. How do we run the race that is set before us? What is the thing that's our focus? It's Jesus. Let me put it to you this way. Anything that hinders your vision of Jesus Christ is an obstacle that needs to be outside of your life. If you cannot see him clearly, and I'm talking about like in a consistent basis, where you're being distracted by other stuff, it's not helping you run. He is the author and perfecter, finisher of your faith. Where do you think faith comes from? See, he's preparing these believers to face stuff where they're going to give their life. And when you read history, they're not screaming, like, oh, why me? They're actually singing hymns to the point where Nero, who's just crazy, sadistic emperor of Rome, would cover his ears and say, does anybody know how to make these Christians shut up? Because they would sing hymns. So lions are coming at them and they're just worshiping Jesus. Do you know that there were people in the Romans, they would go and watch this. It was like their movies, rated R movies that they'd go see. And then there were people that would, as Christians are being devoured and gladiators are, cutting them and slicing them up, there would be people that would come down the stadium and actually walk into the arena with them because they wanted what they had. Because instead of cowering and running away, they just simply were worshiping Jesus. And I want that. Do you know that the Christians would fight among themselves who would be the next one? Because they counted it an honor to give their life for Jesus Christ. They had their vision set on someone. It's not something. It wasn't set on a denomination. It wasn't set on a particular set of teachings. It was on the person of Jesus Christ. And if you don't have your eyes on him, how do you ever expect to have faith? How in the world are you going to endure in this world? It will not happen. It's keeping your eyes focused on him. And you keep it on him, and you might see there's stuff going on around you. It's hard and difficult. That's all right, God, this is happening, but man, my focus, you sure are amazing. I love you. I mean, read the Psalms, and you find David saying, like in Psalms 27, even though the enemy's armies encamp against me and all this, Lord, I don't care. This is one thing I want, Lord. I want to behold your glory. I just want to be in your presence, Lord. And so they can come. He's just saying, haters are going to hate. That's all right. But Lord, I'm just going to be in your presence, Lord. That's all I want. That's all I want. I'm just going to focus on you. I'm not going to even let that distract me from you. I'm telling you, this is a key thing. You want to be bold in your witness for Jesus Christ? Don't look so much at mechanics on stuff. That'll help you. But look to Jesus. Fall so in love with him. And just live. I don't think that the first church had evangelism classes. Not that it's bad. I'm not tearing that down. I'm not demeaning any of that. What I'm saying is that they had Jesus. They loved Jesus. They had their eyes set on him. And see, we tend to look at ourselves and we don't even know it. We can't share our faith with someone across the street because we're more worried and concerned about how we will look or how they're going to respond to us than the fact that Jesus may want to touch that person's life and that Jesus loves that person. And here you have Moses who gives up, the lifestyle of the rich and famous to take on the reproach of the Israelites and to suffer for Christ. He chose this and sees it as greater wealth than anything this world can offer. And I have a hard time crossing the street to go talk to somebody. Something's off on our vision, I think. We're not running well because our eyes are set on ourselves and our own comfort. And see, this is another, I'll just, little parentheses here, but he chose to suffer for Jesus. I wonder if Paul were alive today and all the stuff that happened to him. Every city he went to almost, they were waiting for him to beat him. He's shipwrecked, destitute. You know what I mean? The people hated. Do you know that there was a group of people that would go anywhere that they heard that he planted a church, they would go and specifically try to undo everything that he did. And I think if we saw him today, we'd go like, man, where's your faith, Paul? Good grief. Why is all this stuff happening? But you find that he has a different vision. He has a different outlook completely that enables him to be an amazing man of faith. because he wasn't looking at the stuff he was going through. So we find even here in verse 2 that even Jesus was able to endure the cross and he despised the shame. How did he do that? You go, well, he was Jesus. Yeah. Fully man, fully God. Yeah. It's for the joy that was set before him. He didn't just look at the cross. That wasn't the period. That was just continuation of what God was wanting to do through him. And then in verse 3, he tells us to consider. This means I want you to think. I want you to ponder this. I want you to take time and think about this. So it's not just simply we just read, consider. It's like he wants you to take time to think about this, about him, who's Jesus, who endured from sinners such hostility against himself. And what's the end result if I begin to think about Jesus in that way? What if I begin to consider how he suffered and I keep my eyes focused on him? I will not grow weary and I will not lose heart. Could it be that in our faith, when we grow weary and lose heart, it's just simply misplaced focus? I've come to believe that faith isn't just something we try to produce, and I'm trying to get faith and feel faith and whatever the case that it might be. But faith is a product of something. It's a product of what I focus my attention and my heart on and my thoughts on. If I'm focused on my problem, faith will never come from that. And it's faith that moves mountains. In fact, complaining will come from that, not faith. If I keep my eyes focused on him in the midst of my difficulty and situations, faith is just a byproduct. Well, of course I know something's going to happen. I know Jesus. You know, it's the relationship that you have with him. And this is frontline battle stuff, okay? And this is, you can be in any worst case scenario. I'm telling you, this works because it's all a relationship with Jesus Christ. Now he goes to chapter 13. And he's using Old Testament things where you would take the animal that was sacrificed and you would take it outside the city to burn and consume. So he's talking about how Jesus is our sacrifice. And in verse 12, so Jesus also suffered outside the gate in order to sanctify the people through his own blood. He goes, in light of that, therefore, let us go to him outside the camp and bear the reproach he endured. For here we have no lasting city, but we seek the city that is to come. Through him, then, let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God. That is the fruit of lips that acknowledge his name. Do not neglect to do good and to share with those, to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. And now notice what the author does, because he's been talking about this city. They look forward to a city, you know, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and you have Moses looking forward, and then you have Jesus that looks ahead at the joy that was set before him. And now he just really brings it home. And I want you to understand what he's calling us to do. He's like, just as Jesus suffered reproach, he's like saying, come on, let's go suffer with him. It's like, come on guys, let's go suffer for Jesus. I don't know what kind of altar call that would be. How many want to suffer for Jesus? But that's exactly what the author's saying. He's like saying, come on guys, let's go to where he's at. He suffered reproach, let's go suffer with him. And he tells us, how can we do that? How can I endure when people are making fun of me for my faith? Or how can I endure in difficult situations and circumstances when nothing seems to be working out? How can I deal with even moments of life that, you know, sometimes life knows how to give you, you know, sucker punch. How do I deal with those circumstances? How do I endure? How can I run this race? Well, I understand in verse 14 that here I have no lasting city, but I seek the city that is to come. He's like, come on, let's go suffer with him. We're not meant for this world anyways. Doesn't matter what your birth certificate says, where you were born and your nationality and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, honor culture and family, I understand that. But let me tell you, you're a citizen of heaven. This isn't your home. This isn't my home. And I can say, well, you know, I'm Italian and U.S. citizen, and I was born in Bolivia, grew up in Spain, all that kind of stuff, and it's not my home. None of that's my home. That's my home. The key that I have found, and as I like reading biographies, and I like reading about men and women of God that have done amazing things and endured stuff, and trying to see what's the thing, what is their common theme? And I'll tell you, the common theme is that they just had their eyes set on Jesus. They were just so in love with Jesus, so obsessed with Jesus. It was all about Jesus that none of the stuff that they went through even mattered or even compared. Let me just a couple more verses, and as we close in 2 Corinthians chapter 4. In verse 16. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16. So we do not lose heart, though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self, our spirit is being renewed day by day. Now look at verse 17, and just keep in mind what Paul has been through. He's been left for dead. He gets in jail, all this kind of stuff that's happening. But he says, this light, momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. As we look, so this is happening as we do something here. What is it? As we look, not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient. They come and go, but the things that are unseen, well, that's eternal. Look at Romans chapter 8. Again, you're finding the same secret. This is how could Paul endure the stuff that he endured? And how can he write in Philippians, rejoice, and again I tell you to rejoice, and all this stuff. And how can he tell people to be in thanksgiving when he's in prison? This is like a cave. It's a hole in the ground kind of a thing. There's, it's not the best of places. He's not writing this from the beach or anything like that. And look at Romans chapter 8, verse 18. It says, for I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed. Some translations say in us. I like that. This is nothing. The suffering of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. So let me just say something. We're not sadists. We're not looking for pain. But I'm not backing away when it comes either. I'm able to endure difficulties, whatever may arise in my life. And the secret to it, it's not my background, it's not how smart I am, it's what you're looking at. If I can keep my eyes on Jesus, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to make it. And the enemy can come and maybe steal from me, and I can have bad moments, and life can, sucker punch me, and all this kind of, it's okay. I keep my eye on him. I keep my heart unoffendable in front of him. I keep myself light. I don't carry stuff that's not going to help me run, that I'm not going to even carry it. It's not worth my time. It's not worth my effort. Other people depend on your faith. Other people depend on you running well. Eternity's even in the balance. How do you do that? You keep looking to him. I've been through stuff. I know we could all maybe sit here and talk about stuff that we've been through. I've lost a house. I've had a house burned practically to the ground, lose all my stuff. I know what it's like for people to spread lies, stab you in the back. I know what it's like to go through abuse. We could just talk all day about just stuff that we've been through. What does that even matter in light of Jesus Christ? So I lost my stuff. Big deal. So somebody did something to me that they shouldn't have done. So what? Jesus offers me so much healing and so much forgiveness and love. What was that even? So? Nothing compares with him. If I keep my eyes on myself, I will never run well. Some of you are running in circles. You're not getting anywhere. And you're waiting for the prophetic word that's going to be the word to release you. Well, here it is. Look to Jesus. Keep focused on him. There it is. Receive it. There you go. That's it. It's very simple, but that's it. And our whole life revolves around this one thing. I'm just looking to him. And out of that, all this stuff begins to flow and happen. And whatever happens, and see, this is what will begin to happen. You might be going through a tough time, but you're whistling. You have joy. You have peace. People look at you and go, you're weird. And you don't even notice. You're like, well, I was just looking at Jesus, you know, I mean, and you begin to share your faith. I'm telling you, there's something attractive about that. When other people that go through the same thing say, I would have lost it, man. I would have gone ballistic in this, and you're just there. I'm like, I don't even understand what's going on with you. I'm like, I don't know. I've been in situations where I've tried to worry because I'm like, it seems weird that I'm not worrying about this right now. And I try to, and I can't. Because I'm like, I think a normal person would worry, and I just can't. And it has nothing to do with my personality, my temperament, all that stuff. It's because I had my eyes on Jesus. And I'll tell you, there's moments where I'm losing it, and I realize I've lost sight. I mean, didn't Peter, when he walked on water, as long as he's kept his eyes on Jesus, he was fine, right? He was okay. And the moment he looked to the waves and he looked, oh man, look at the storm, he began to sink. And then he says, Jesus saved me, and Jesus pulls him up. And I love this. I absolutely love this, because Jesus says, why did you doubt, oh you of little faith? Now, if it was me, right? Like if I had, you know, let's say I'm walking on water and somebody comes to me and they sink and I pick up my, hey, you know, you gave it a good try. Next time, this is what you need to do. You know what I mean? Give a pat on the back. Like, good try. I mean, Peter, you were the only one that walked out, you know? That's good. That's good. Jesus gives no excuses. There's none. And Peter can't answer. Because what is he going to say? And why is it that he doubted? What was the doubt in this context? What was the doubt? Where did the unbelief come in? When he started looking away from Jesus. I'm telling you, this is all over the New Testament. It's what you and I are called to do and to be. It's a secret to perseverance. I'm just going to ask you to just stand right where you're at. If you wouldn't mind just closing your eyes for a moment. I just want you to just begin to talk to the Holy Spirit. Come on, begin to just focus your heart on Him. Begin to talk to Him. Sometimes we make it about the problem that we're going through, not about Him. Consider Him. Think about Him. Set your mind on things above. It's all the same thing. It's just look at Jesus. Keep focused on Him. And stuff might come and try to bump your attention. Well, then just refocus again. Just keep your eyes on Him. He's the author, finisher of your faith. It's the secret to great faith and endurance. I just looked at Him. I looked to the city that is to come. Oh, we love you, Jesus. We love you, Jesus. We love you. Thank you, Jesus. Man, you know, Paul prays a really great prayer. He prays that we'd receive the spirit of wisdom and revelation, that we'd come to know Him, that the eyes of our heart would be enlightened, and that we would come to know Him. I think another way of saying it is just like, God, just open our eyes to you. We want to see you more clearly. And I really believe that the Holy Spirit wants to do that today. And maybe you find yourself right now at a place where you've been focused on other stuff, and you're carrying even grudges and injury and offense because look at me, look what they've done to me. And the Holy Spirit today just wants to wipe all that out, and He just wants you to just look at Jesus. Look to Him. You know, it's like that song, like look to Jesus, and the things of this world will grow strangely dim in the light of His glory and His grace. I mean, there's a truth right there. It's just, you just look to Him and just let all that stuff just melt away, and it just doesn't even matter anymore. The next thing you know, you're just lost in His presence. You're like, I don't even know what to do. And I really believe, man, if God has been speaking to your heart, and you're saying, I want God to even heal my eyes, that I can see Him more clearly, I just want to take a moment and pray with you. You might be needing even endurance today. You're like, I need that perseverance and that strength that comes from being focused on Jesus, on the person of who He is. And if you're even needing that today, I'm going to ask you to just come on up right now. Come on, just come up. Let all that other stuff begin to melt away. There might be some resentment, some bitterness that you're going to leave right now, today, right here at the altar. There might be people that the Holy Spirit's already talking to you. You've been carrying this grudge for a very long time, and this offense, this bitterness, let it go. I want you to let it go today. I'm really serious. It's hindering your walk, and I want you to run well. I want you to be effective in what God has called you to do and called you to be. So just let it go. Come on, ministers, just start praying.